Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Efficient and Proficient with me, Kevin Hua. It's a new year, and I want to show you how I'm coping. On steel, that is. So before I show you my coping mechanisms, I want to show you what we'll be coping. We've got some C-channel and some I-beam. So this item here is a C-channel. They call it a C-channel because it looks like a C. These come in different sizes, like C4, C5, C6. That's going to be their height in inches. They also come in different weights, like first weight, second weight, and third weight. The higher the weight, the thicker the web. So the most efficient way to cope a C-channel into the same size C-channel is to take an offcut like this. You're going to butt it up so the daylight disappears. Make sure it's flush on both ends. And then you're going to mark the inside. Mark both of those flanges like that. Take a tri-square, combination square, and you're going to follow that line down the two sides. And now you're ready to cut. So the next material we're going to cope into each other is I-beam. Can you guess why they call it I-beam? It looks like an eye. Now there are different types of I-beams. There's S-beam and there's also H-beam. Two of the most common types are I-beam and H-beam. The difference between them will be the shape and the ratio between the web and the flange. Their thicknesses will change. This is the flange and this is the web. So what we're trying to accomplish with coping this is having this beam run into this beam and not have this giant gap in here. So we'll be cutting away from the flanges to make that fit. So what I'm going to do first is mark a line from my web to my flange. Then I'm going to adjust my tri-square to that line. That gives me the depth from the edge of the flange to the face of the web. I'll take that and transfer it to the beam I'm coping. So you could drag your square along like I've done. The other way to do it, give yourself a mark on both ends and square across. That way you can make sure that your cut is square whether or not this beam was square when you started with it. The next thing we want to do is figure out how far down we have to cut this. You really want to make sure you check your blueprint because that measurement will change. The minimum you'd want to do though is down to this radius right here, which is the thickness of your flange. So I've checked my blueprint and our measurement is 1 inch. Now the next thing we're going to do is trace our line from our mark back to where we're going to be cutting this flange. Now next, we'll have to repeat the process on the other flange. You may have noticed that I didn't bother putting a line here on the inside. What I'm going to do is cut up into my flange and my cut will pop through here and that'll show me where I have to go with this line. Now keep in mind, you do not want a square edge on structural material. So when I pop through here, I'm going to give it a small radius from this line to my other cut line. For the purpose of this video, I will be using oxy-acetylene to cut these beams. Before you use any cutting process, don't forget your PPE. Until you're comfortable with your cuts, it's always good to double check before you clean anything up. You may have to take a little more out. Now, another thing I want to mention is that sometimes the distance from here to here is not the same as here to here. So that is something you'll want to double check. You can see I have a weldable gap here, but if I flip that I-beam, now we're getting a little gappy. The cool thing about using an offcut is it's also a jig to check your cut. So these are the two most common types of materials that you're going to be needing to coat when you're out there in the field. You can use these techniques to also coat C-channel into I-beam. Measure that, bring it over, leave that side square. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Efficient and Proficient. I hope these tips and tricks will help you coat this year.